It's been almost 8 years, a whole lot of work, and here we are sitting at episode 200 of the Shunned Podcast. Episode 100 featured 100 things that you need to know in order to heal from Jehovah's Witnesses. And this episode is going to feature a lot of ways that the cult may have impacted you that perhaps you never thought about. If you watch or you listen to this episode, I'll be surprised if you don't walk away with at least something to think about. If not many things, maybe things that you can apply in your own life. We're going to talk about how we relate to others as we navigate this post-JW world. But we're also going to talk about how we relate to Jehovah's Witnesses. Then we're going to talk about how we relate to ourselves and drop a bunch of points for consideration regarding that. And after that, we're going to talk about the teachings and culture of Jehovah's Witnesses and some of the more directly related impacts of their beliefs. And some might enjoy a bonus episode of my views that are often a bit unconventional on things regarding things like Norway, the X community, the ExJW community as a whole, violence in Jehovah's Witnesses, and maybe a little interview of myself as well if people are interested. Now, some watching or listening for the first time might wonder who I am or why anybody would listen to me, and that's fair. And frankly, no matter who I am or who anyone is, you shouldn't blindly take anything they say as gospel, nor am I asking you to do that from me. But among those that work in the ExJW community, I think I have a unique perspective because I'm probably the most active activist that you can find. I literally work in this community every day, barring vacations or some weekends, but frankly, even then, I often have people reaching out that I'm responding to. I'm a cult recovery coach with my own lived experience as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of individuals since 2019, often working with roughly 6 individuals a day on hour-long sessions each, diving into people's lives, helping them to heal, to move forward, to figure out who they are, and then to have a life that is reflective of who they are and who they want to be, and not who they were in the past. I also have 3 podcasts. This JW Life, which is my personal story, told in such a way as to help others process their own. We translated that into Spanish to help another community out. So it's known in Spanish as Esta Vida como Testigo de Jehovah. And this JW Life was also turned into a book called Becoming Jehovah, which is available to read for free online. Links to everything mentioned here will be in the description below, or if you're listening on the podcast, it'll be in the show notes. Today, I'm the host of the Shunned Podcast, where I help other people to tell their stories their way, which I've been doing since 2017. I'm kind of one of the OG podcasters still out here doing their thing. Been around a while. My channels have been viewed, listened to, downloaded, etc., over 1.5 million times, at least at this recording. And there are lots of podcasters and YouTubers out there. And not to diminish what they've done or just to, promote myself, but I don't think that there's not many in the community who actually work daily in the community doing the deep work that I do with others. I've also developed an ExJW cart that I take out and do street activism with. Last year, I went out and did a one-man audio protest at a regional convention. So I've done a lot of different types of activism as well. I've also been privileged to speak at the University of Louisville in a psychology class, at the inaugural When Rights and Religions Collide conference, and I've done online and in-person speaking for the International Cultic Studies Association. Oh, I've even created a fun little trivia quiz, a website that I've been able to get active Jehovah's Witnesses to interact with at jwtrivia.com. It's in 3 languages, and if active Jehovah's Witnesses take it, they will be introduced to some new concepts that perhaps they never thought about. I ran a private Facebook group of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses for a couple thousand members that was aimed at positively impacting people and moving people forward for a few years. I've always been active in various Facebook groups, subreddits, forums, trying to offer support ever since I left in 2015. In fact, we're coming up on our 10th Shunniversary in September, so it's been a minute. Speaking of that Shunniversary, I turned that September the 2nd into ExJW Help Day, and so we collect money and donate money, and we have tried to use that date as something powerful and positive in the world, and we've used it to help people in the community, just where I live, in some unique ways by doing random acts of kindness. And we've also turned our attention to the ExJW community and given out some scholarships and different things as well, helped fund some people's first Christmases. So, I've been involved in a lot of different ways. And I mention these things because, well, frankly, I'm damn proud of the work that I do and the work that I've done. And because this work gives me a unique opportunity to dive deeper into the impacts of Jehovah's Witnesses than I think many would probably have. If nothing else, simply from the sheer volume of hours and work put into this. And that pride primarily comes from the impact that it's had on others and the very kind notes that I receive at times, and the people that I've been able to work with in my coaching practice. And I get to see people move on and live lives that they enjoy. I get to see people feel more confident in their own skin, feel more comfortable with who they are, maybe find their own voice in new ways, find careers that fit who they are, or partners that they've been looking for. So I get to see a lot of really cool things. And yeah, who wouldn't be proud of that? That's just an awesome thing to get to experience. So when you listen to what I'm about to break down, it's coming from all of these experiences. Again, I think it would be difficult to find many people with more time spent in this community and deep discussions on these subjects. These are my observations and lessons that hopefully you can take away from my experience, from the experience that I've had in the community. And although I don't have time to go deep, to do a deep dive into every point that I'm going to mention here individually, you're going to walk away with something here that gives you an aha moment of some sort. And perhaps it starts other discussions. Maybe someday I'll do episodes on different things as well. But these are all types of things that come up in my coaching practice and through all of these experiences that I've had. And we can all learn collectively together. And yeah, it's awesome to be able to share. So let's go ahead and dive in. The first thing we're going to talk about is relationships with others, including Jehovah's Witnesses. It should be no wonder that we have a hard time advocating for ourselves, the self-advocacy that we may need to do in our own lives, when the reality that we were taught things like, to the Greeks, I became a Greek that I might gain them, right? Or to the Jews, I became as a Jew that I might gain them. That to stumble other people is the worst thing that you could ever do, right? We were taught to become who other people needed us to be to benefit them, but we were never taught to be ourselves, to feel good in our own skin, and to advocate for ourselves. We were taught to manipulate people, to devalue ourselves, to disown ourselves and lead ourselves about like slaves. That basically everyone should be your friend, and that, well, maybe I should say that everyone should like you, right? Because you're going to become whoever they need you to be in order to be liked. And so it's no wonder that in the ex-Jehovah's Witness community, we have a lot of folks that really are going to struggle to advocate for self when self was seen as just something to be avoided and something to be given to others, in this chameleon-like aspect where we're constantly changing self in order to make other people happy. Jehovah's Witness relationships are possessive and transactional. They often go super deep, really fast. Well, super intense and enmeshed really fast, right? Two people become one in this weird, enmeshed, almost cult of each other type of way. But there's often not a lot of real depth to those relationships, even though they may be intense. So maybe intense is a better word for that. But relationships in the organization really are possessive because you're so desperate for anyone that if you find anybody who might be your friend, you bear hug them and glom onto them for everything that it's worth. And transactional, and that it's often about what have you done for me lately. There's a lot of users in the organization, and so it's important to look out for those things. Find people that respect your boundaries, not people that see your boundaries as an obstacle to overcome. You can tell a lot about a person by their reaction to somebody crying in their presence. How do they react? Are they able to support a person? Do they feel threatened by those tears? Do they make it all about themselves? Or can they see the person who's in front of them? And do they have the emotional intelligence and have what it takes to show up for that person? I guess to add to that, I'll say that a lot of ex Jehovah's Witnesses express, and I'll raise my own hand here, that in their families, crying was seen as this threat when you were a kid. I mean, not just the good old, you want something to cry about, I'll give you something, that horrible abusive threat that so many parents make, but the just the fact that people were often shamed for having feelings or tears. If you want to cry, go in your room and cry. Take that, like, take your secret shame away from us. Be banished to a faraway land because we don't want to deal with your feelings. Be wary of putting people on pedestals. You've heard of the fight, flight, freeze response, right? Well, there's a fourth F, and that's fawn. Jehovah's Witnesses are very much people pleasers. They fawn over people. Think about like when the circuit overseer comes and everyone fawns all over him and laughs at his stupid jokes and gives him green handshakes, right? Exchanging some cash. There's just a lot of codependency. There's a lot of really being in the cult of one or of many. There's just this need to seek validation and love from others that isn't really love, and to chase people constantly. Even something called limerence. Just going to throw that out. I'm just going to throw the word out, limerence, and let you look it up. Many in the ExJW community would likely be diagnosed with PTSD or complex PTSD. But instead of post-traumatic stress, and of course that's all fair, those are adequate and good diagnoses, unfortunately, for those of us who've lived this experience. But the reality is that instead of post-traumatic stress, many are digging out the bottom of the very hole that they're trying to fill by chasing this dangling carrot of Jehovah's Witness relationships, creating present traumatic stress that makes it really hard to heal. It's really hard to fill that hole in while you're digging out the bottom of it by being around the very people who are abusive and causing yourself more traumatic stress. Are you institutionalized? Is the prison of Jehovah's Witnesses attractive to you on some level? Do you want to go back? A really valuable lesson is to realize that you don't owe anybody anything. Now, sure, basic human decency, right? But just because someone has done something for you does not automatically put you in some sort of debt to them, right? Even your parents were supposed to raise you. They had you, right? If they didn't, that would be neglect. Uh, Feeding and watering and clothing you, those are like low bars to clear for parents. And everyone does things for their own reasons, right? Like, even when we do something nice for another person, if we weren't getting a dopamine hit from it or some sort of feel good chemicals in our own body, we probably wouldn't do those things, right? So again, it kind of cuts back to the nature of Jehovah's Witness relationships. They're very transactional and possessive. Uh, but we don't have to be that way. We don't have to feel like we owe anybody anything just because they've been in our lives. If they like to be around us, there's probably some reason that they enjoy being around us. Believe it or not, I know that's hard for a lot of us who've been told we have nothing to offer to believe. But if other people like being around us, that doesn't mean that we somehow owe them something. So we all are just in relationship with other people individually for whatever that relationship is worth, but it doesn't put us in debt to other people. Just like we don't owe Jehovah something, right? We were made to feel like we were always in debt, whether it was the concept of original sin, which I call original gaslighting, or whatever it may be. You don't owe people things. Maybe if you borrow money from them, you should pay it back. But otherwise, we don't owe people things just for existing or for being in relationship with one another. You, that's you, I'm talking to you. You do not have to fix relationships that you did not break. The way that we love others is often what we're hoping to get back. Inside the cult, it was always guilty until proven innocent, wasn't it? Whether in the back room of a Kingdom Hall, or maybe you were at home with your parents who had ransacked your room looking for some sort of trumped up charge against you. Whatever the case may be, it was always if there was a suspicion around us, that suspicion had to be right. And we were probably going to get in trouble. So as a result, many ex-Jehovah's Witnesses have major anxiety when around any authority, whether it's at work, police, a doctor, anybody that presents in an authoritative way. Can be very intimidating to those of us who have been the victims of authority ran amok. We were taught to cut off people really easily, weren't we? But that's not always healthy. Oddly enough, though, what I've observed is that many don't cut off the very people that they need to, instead cutting off people sometimes that they don't have to. When you first start to set boundaries, you're probably going to feel like you're being mean because for the first time, you're being nice to yourself. A normal, healthy parent, if met by an attacker on the street while they had their child with them, would tell their kid to run and take on that attacker, right? But if you really think about it, Jehovah's Witnesses are the opposite of that. They won't protect you. Your Jehovah's Witness parents, let's just say as an average here, would gladly take you, their child, and put you in front of the attacker, Jehovah, right? They're all afraid of Jehovah. Jehovah is going to kill them if they don't do what he says. So he is basically the attacker. And your parents, or many of our families or former friends, rather than protecting us, they would gladly sacrifice us if it means that they get to live. And that's just kind of the JW way, which makes it hard to have relationships like that, doesn't it? Something I see a lot are ex-Jehovah's Witnesses on different forums and groups, and they'll come on and they're super excited because, maybe they've been shunned for decades, and for some reason they were forced into contact with, we're gonna say mom. So we saw mom, we haven't seen mom in decades. She shunned us, and she was nice to us for a second at whatever it was that we were at. Maybe there was a funeral or who knows, right? Whatever reason it is that a witness might suddenly be around us, and they actually said something kind to us, right? Maybe your mom even said, I love you. Or maybe it's the memorial season and you get a text, oh, I love you so much, right? How do we respond to that? Do we respond to that in a way where we're mistaking this drop of water that they've dripped upon us in the desert, this emotional desert? Do we accept that like it's an oasis and like it's really going to quench our thirst because we're so damn thirsty? Or we take that crumb that they've kicked off the table towards us, and maybe we feel like we've had a full meal because we're just so hungry for love. That's really sad, isn't it? And so what I want to say is, beware your heart. Jehovah's Witnesses exploit the vulnerable, and you, by nature of being an ex-Jehovah's Witness, you're one of the vulnerable, right? That's what this whole thing is designed to do, to cause pain in your heart that they can exploit. And so, think about it. If you had a friend named Bob, right? And Bob has had a crush on Shannon for the last 20 years. And Shannon has never given Bob the time of day, right? But you're hanging out one day, Bob comes running up to you. Oh my gosh, you're not going to believe this. I was at this party the other day and Shannon was there and she had to squeeze by me in the line for something. And she's like, oh, hi, Bob. And oh my God, we are going to have the most beautiful babies when we get married, right? We're going to have this long relationship. I can't wait to live and to sit on the beach with Shannon when I'm old and we're both retired, right? You'd be like, hey, Bob, get a grip. Bob, I know you like, you're head over heels for this girl, but chill out, man. Like you're about to do something very desperate. We, as ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, can be like Bob because there are things that we've wanted in our lives, very normal things, very healthy things that we've wanted, perhaps just, oh, I don't know, basic love from a parent. But we have to at some point realize that these people aren't going to give us what we need or they don't have it. And so, us continually getting excited every time they look our way, and then posting about it somewhere and telling everybody else, oh, just keep up hope. They're going to come for you. All that does is get you hurt and whipped up, and it gets everybody else whipped up and hurt as well. And what you never see is that person come back a month later when mom's not talked to them again, or 12 months later, a year, or 36, or 10 years later, and mom has never talked to them again. You never hear from that person again when the reality hits. So just really, accept what it is in the moment and you can be happy for it. But please beware your heart that it doesn't get overly excited when these types of things happen and start to, create your own little paradise narrative, projecting out your own hope for the future that is just as unfounded as the one we were sold. There's a lot of things that we've been taught to feel bad about. Maybe it's just in culture in general, like if you've been divorced multiple times or something like that. I just want to say, don't feel bad if you've been divorced, maybe even multiple times, coming from, the cult of Jehovah's Witnesses. Remember, you're kind of expected to marry every person that you come in contact with and date. So when if you're out there in the dating scene and you're looking for someone and you feel bad because you've been divorced, and just realize where you come from. I mean, I think most people, if they had to marry everybody that they dated, there'd be a whole lot more divorces than there already are, right? So you're just trying to keep a little perspective. That's maybe a little reframe on that. If you, for some reason, feel bad about the fact that perhaps you've had relationships end in divorce. You don't owe everyone a reason for everything you do and every thought in your head. Over explaining is another symptom of having been one of Jehovah's Witnesses, feeling like we owe people explanations so that they won't hold things like maybe absence at a party or something against us and never invite us again because clearly we're evil because we didn't come to one party. There's just so much pressure on every interaction with Jehovah's Witnesses that we may have felt the need to over explain. But in the real world, you don't really have to do that so much. Avoidance is not a really great way to live life. Another word for avoidance might be denial. We see that in addiction communities and such. Not a healthy way to live your life. But avoidance was kind of the way, right, as Jehovah's Witnesses, and especially in relationship with others, but also self, being afraid of confrontation. Everything in Jehovah's Witnesses had this, again, it's like you're laying on the guillotine with your head on the chopping block, waiting for the blade to fall at any moment. You could just ask even a very sincere question and end up drug into the back room at a Kingdom Hall, or mom and dad are thumping you with the Bible, so to speak, for a couple hours because you wanted to do something normal. So confrontation and avoidance of it holds a lot for us in relationships, but it's not really an effective or healthy way to live. Um, Again, Jehovah's Witnesses, when they have differences, there always has to be a winner and a loser, a right and a wrong. I'm right, you're wrong. You need to know you're wrong. I need to let you know that you're wrong, right? And it's you see a lot of ex Jehovah's Witnesses. We sometimes, and I struggled with this at the time too, struggle with right fighting, like getting online and I'm going to argue with you and I want to debate with you and I'm right and you're wrong. It's just such a fruitless and empty pursuit. Uh, but there's avoidance of confrontation, and then funny enough, some of us really got to like confrontation in ways. Neither is super balanced. Both can be extremes, and we have to watch ourselves when it comes to our relationships with others and how we tend to go down maybe one or those two of those extremes based on the extreme relational aspects of the life that we lived as Jehovah's Witnesses. If you want to have a close relationship with someone, that requires vulnerability. It's very hard and not really sustainable to have like a don't ask, don't tell type of relationship, which is what relationships with Jehovah's Witnesses often end up being. We all learned how to work for others, but not with others as Jehovah's Witnesses. We were supposed to be on the same team, so to speak, right? But really, when you look back at it, wasn't it kind of every man, woman, and child for themselves? It was very individualistic, even though it claimed to be collective. And so we really learned how to work for others, but teamwork, true teamwork and working with others is something that, at least for a lot of folks, they really missed out on. We weren't able to work with teams, sports, and activities like that. So this is something to bear in mind when we're seeking out relationships. When it comes to working with other people, that is often a struggle for a lot of folks, especially at first. Seeing your parents as a disappointment to you instead of the opposite way around is very freeing. Something that often comes up for ex Jehovah's Witnesses is maybe that we'll be talking to somebody in the world at large and maybe explaining how life was as one of Jehovah's Witnesses to them. And here chimes in person over on the side, and they're like, "Oh no, that's not right. Jehovah's Witnesses are lovely people. I mean, they come to my door, they're so nice, or I worked with them, they're so nice." And I just when I hear that, I mean, first of all, how invalidating, right? Very frustrating to have someone invalidate your experience because, oh, I'm sorry, you met a witness who's interested in converting you at some point for like, 5 minutes, right? Congratulations. I just want to say, like, look, the stripper doesn't love you. The stripper at the club does not love you. They are just trying to get something from you. They are extracting something from you. They may care about you in some way, but they don't love you. And, I think a lot of people in the world, Jehovah's Witnesses are so good at putting on a facade. And sometimes it snows those people. And so they can't really see what's there. So much so, in fact, that they would discount the actual lived experiences of those who have been impacted by it. And it's easy kind of sometimes to see it in that context, but it also goes to us, right? Like protecting our hearts, like I mentioned earlier. Um, Again, back to the stripper doesn't love you at the club, right? She's trying to get something from you. I've seen so many instances where Jehovah's Witness parents, especially as they get older, more frail, start feeling their mortality, you'll see that they start reaching out sometimes to their ExJW kids. And I'm sorry, but oftentimes it's not because they love that person. They want something from you. They didn't save for retirement and they want some cash. They are afraid of dying alone or they need somebody to help out around the house. Now suddenly they want to use you, but that's not love. They're just calling you in for things that they could easily replace if they had money by hiring someone to do some cleaning around the house or do the honeydew list or whatever, right? I just watched so many ex-JW kids get used by their JW parents. And sometimes when they have multiple kids, I've seen so many instances where they have Jehovah's Witness kids, active ones. They don't want to bother them though with their troubles. They don't want to ask their Jehovah's Witness kids because their Jehovah's Witness kids are doing something worthwhile. But you suck. You're an ex Jehovah's Witness. So they don't mind using you. And I know that sounds really harsh and I know that sounds really skeptical, but I've just seen people get hurt time and time and time again. And again, it's just really hard to have these relationships because Jehovah's Witnesses don't know how to love. They know how to use people, they know how to control people. They almost always have an angle for everything that they do, but it's very difficult for them just to love you for you without there being something in it that they're wanting for themselves that they're going to take from you. You don't have to buy someone something just because they were nice to you. We were always told that it was the outsiders that we needed to worry about, when the reality it was the insiders, including our own friends and family, that we had to worry about. And because of that, we ended up being taught to push away friendly people. It's really hard not to take things personally as an ex-Jehovah's Witness because, I mean, first of all, we had this JW persecution complex, right? We were always taught to look for offense when anyone didn't agree with us or whatever the case may be. But usually, if a person is coming to us in some sort of a negative way, whatever they're saying to us is often just a projection of wherever they are. It's more representative of where that person who's talking to us is coming from. It doesn't necessarily define us, but we were taught to define ourselves by the way that other people see us, and that's bass backwards. Kind of touched on this a little bit already, but just beware the low bar in relationships. I mean, we were all given such a low bar. That if our parents today treated us even with the basic human decency, again, back to fawning or falling all over someone because they treat us just with basic human decency because we're so starved for that or for to be treated well. Again, just realize that because what we went through was so abusive psychologically, mentally, emotionally, sometimes physically, sexually, whatever. But because all of our relationships were so conditional and everything just hinged on our performance around other people, just beware that you're not living life today with relationships that you think are really good, but it's just a very low bar to clear. And maybe you're really overlooking some things you might want to look at that are impacting you deeply because, well, it kind of conforms to or is reminiscent of the past. Are you holding out hope forever that your witness family will change and leave, just like they hold out hope forever that you're going to come back? It can be really hard to assume that your friends actually like you on the outside of the cult when maybe the friends that you had on the inside didn't really like you, or maybe you actually didn't really like your friends on the inside. Maybe you had a lot of friends who treated you badly as Jehovah's Witnesses. Those are very common things. So that plays into how we see ourselves when we're in relationships with others on the outside. We might have a hard time assuming that they actually do like us. Do you run around frantically trying to hide who you really are today as an adult if your parents are coming over? It's kind of interesting that even never witnesses, people who were never Jehovah's Witnesses at all, will often bend over backwards to avoid upsetting the easily upset Jehovah's Witnesses, won't they? It's kind of sad. It really shows their power. But if you think about it, there's a lot of situations where Jehovah's Witnesses complain in work situations or whatever it may be. And everyone tends to capitulate to that squeaky wheel. Are you doing that when your squeaky wheel comes over? And how does that make you feel? One thing that I think happens a lot, even in never dub relationships, never JW relationships, is that people tend to somewhat outgrow their parents over time. As parents sometimes reach certain ages, the world has changed a lot. There's a lot more information today. There's a lot more emotional intelligence, or at least access to it. Doesn't mean everyone's going to pick up on it or want it. But a lot of people, I think, kind of outgrow their parents in certain ways as time goes by. Maybe it's even just adaptation to technology and things like that. But with us and our Jehovah's Witness parents, there's a really good chance that you have vastly outgrown your parents. And if you can maybe start to see that, you'll stop feeling so small around them. When you don't know how to make friends, maybe how to even be a good friend, narcissists are always around and they are happy to come take from you, to love bomb you, make you feel good, and show you how not to be friends. And I'm going to end this section on this. Healthy people aren't in cults, okay? So chances are your relationship with your family was going to be strained whether or not they were Jehovah's Witnesses. Just the fact that they're in it shows that something's not quite right, right? There's something, there's a part of the program they don't have. Again, back to Jehovah's Witnesses don't know how to love. They don't know how to accept other people who aren't like them. There's a lot of narcissism inside of Jehovah's Witnesses and a lot of codependency as people end up doing that as a natural response to the narcissism. But we're not talking typically about healthy people here. And even if those people were to leave Jehovah's Witnesses tomorrow, it's okay. And you might find that you're not necessarily going to be besties immediately, or maybe even ever, just because you share the same bloodline. That it may be that that person is just not really healthy. I mean, there's lots of parent-child relationships or other family relationships that are not great in the world around us, right? So it's not like it's just a uniquely Jehovah's Witness thing. And so sometimes that can help us to add a little perspective too to this whole situation. Because I think a lot of times we think, but for Jehovah's Witnesses, we'd have like this magical, best ever relationship with our parents. And the reality is that that's sadly very much likely untrue. All right, so now let's move on to our relationships with ourselves and moving forward. It's going to be hard to love anybody that you have prejudice against, right? You'd first have to challenge your prejudice and be open to being wrong about the person, right? So, if you want to get to a point where you love yourself, you're first going to have to rid yourself of a lot of prejudice that you have against you, against yourself, from the distorted messaging that came from the cult of Jehovah's Witnesses. You were once strong enough to leave a cult, to shake your entire worldview, and to risk it all. So don't let much smaller things prevent you from getting the life that you want after you leave. The cult basically broke in and robbed your house. Are you going to sit in an empty house forever? Do you judge yourself because you have little to show? Let's talk self-deprecating remarks or jokes for a minute. Words have meaning. When I first started this JW life, I would get these really kind messages from people at times saying that I had done something that was so nice, so good, so helpful, helped them maybe to leave the cult. And my response was, I'm just a jackass sitting in his basement talking to himself. Now, let's think about that. Some of you may believe that, and that's fine too. Shout out to those of you who aren't fans. But saying that was a way to not feel good about myself, to not allow myself to feel good about the work that I was doing. Um, in sharp contrast to earlier when I was telling you the things that I'm proud of today, right? I wasn't able to do that back then. I wasn't used to being praised. I wasn't used to feeling good about myself, at least in that way, maybe in some ways in life, but not that one. And and so I wasn't sure how to take that. I had to really work on that. In fact, I had a little email folder. Somebody had given me this advice one time to have a little attaboy folder. And so I did. And when I would get these nice messages, I put them in this folder. And so I'd ask myself, sometimes I forced myself to go read that folder. Might have even been uncomfortable at times. But what I needed to ask myself was, I'm getting all this super kind feedback and I'm struggling to feel it. Am I wrong or is everyone else wrong? And is it possible that maybe I was just given bad messaging about who I am and my value all along? So, if nothing else, what would it hurt to believe that maybe I am doing good things and maybe I do believe, maybe I do deserve some praise for this. Maybe I am really helping people. And that was something that I really struggled with. And I also want to add to that I also struggled with, or the other side of that is that not only was I kind of taking a dump all over myself by saying that, but also the person giving the nice remark, by not accepting their compliments or their praise. And praise is really hard for a lot of us to accept because we weren't given that our whole lives, right? I used to run groups of ExJWs witnesses, group coaching events at times. And if I wanted to kill the momentum of that conversation, all I would have to do is say, okay, let's go around the room now and let's all say one thing or maybe two things. Ooh, two things that you really love about yourself and that you're proud of. And all of a sudden the conversation would come to a screeching halt, right? Now I can make it even more difficult and say, tell me two things that you're proud of about yourself or that you love about yourself that aren't what you give to other people, that are purely about you. That's even harder. It shouldn't be that hard. We were just raised in that emotional desert I mentioned earlier. And so words have meaning, not just how we talk about others, but also how we talk about and reference ourselves. So beware the self-deprecation monster, because oftentimes it's really showing how you feel about yourself. And you deserve better than that. You always did. So many people that I work with have imposter syndrome. Like they don't deserve the things that they have, they didn't earn those things. But the reality is that we've had to earn everything that we have. We had to scratch and claw and overcome, right? So maybe, just maybe, you're not an imposter. Maybe you're just used to having to act so different than the reality around you that you can't fathom being real. Your reluctance to change could be rooted in the fact that every day was the same growing up. The same beliefs, same studies, same people, same meetings. And that sameness is likely a reason that many don't remember their childhood as well. There wasn't anything memorable happening. There was nothing to stand out. Every day was the same shade of gray. We were taught as Jehovah's Witnesses not to question the things that we were told, right? Not to look at reality. In fact, that denial was a coping mechanism for survival in some cases. But often the coping mechanisms that we have as kids end up being the problems that we face and have to deal with as adults because they're maladaptive. Living a life of denial or that avoidance I mentioned earlier, refusing to look at what happened or how it might be showing up in your life today, that could be and very likely is a continuation of that denial. There's lots of workaholism in the ExJW community. Work was often an escape from Jehovah's Witness activities or maybe your family. And without any other options to figure out who you might have been, work was an easy identity to kind of put on. So it just kind of becomes a default mode for a lot of folks. They don't really know who they are otherwise. And then face it, in culture, we often, what's one of the first things you ask somebody you meet, right? What do you do for a living? So we kind of define ourselves often by our work, but there's so much more to us, and we've never really been able to explore it. So just beware the trap of workaholism. It could be that it's being used as an escape or that avoidance or denial, really not even giving yourself a chance to figure out who you are. There's a difference between resigned contentment and happiness. I'm just going to leave that one there. We were all taught to get our self esteem and our identity through exterior people, through outside forces, through others. Let's face it, women in particular were to get their identity through others, particularly their relationships to Jehovah's Witness men, right? So women, you can't just be Jenny, your brother, your elder Shemuel's wife, right? Or you're a pioneer or whatever, but you can't just be Jenny, my wife, and be interested in the things you're into and have your own personality. You're kind of viewed as this attachment to some man. And that's really a very sad thing and something that can even follow us outside of the cult. We're going to touch again on avoidance. So it's said that if a storm rolls through the plain states here in the United States, through the middle of the country, so you've got this big storm that's rolling through, and you have a herd of buffalo and a herd of cattle, and the storm comes across, the buffalo will run at the storm, and the cows will run away from the storm. And most people will just automatically say, oh, smart cows, dumb buffalo, right? But the buffalo, because they run at the storm and the storm is coming at them, they reduce the amount of exposure to the storm. Whereas cows, because they run away from the storm, end up at a point running with the storm, and therefore they prolong their exposure to the storm. And now I'm going to leave you to look in your life and just say, are there some storms that maybe I'm running away from? And am I maybe prolonging some things? Is avoidance creeping up in these ways? And is there maybe an opportunity to be the buffalo here? Are you putting off things that you need to do or even want to do because you still have forever on your mind? Maybe not in a rush to do anything? The ability to do hard things for yourself is what's going to determine your success. It always has for everyone, not just ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. But sometimes after fighting everything that comes with being one of Jehovah's Witnesses, we get knocked down and we stop wanting to do more hard things, which is totally understandable. And sometimes you need to sit and lick your wounds for a minute and figure out how to get up and where you're going to go. But it's the effort that is often going to determine things. If you have the greatest ideas in the world, there's so many people on this planet today who have these amazing ideas that can help humanity or be a big entrepreneurial success or whatever. But ideas are a dime a dozen. It's execution. It's doing the thing where the rubber meets the road. And unfortunately, if we want to move forward, that rubber is going to have to hit the road and some gas is going to have to be applied to move that car forward, right? So It really comes down to, can we do hard things? And then, of course, can we figure out who we are and put that effort into the right direction for ourselves? And we're just doing hard things for other people. Well, they might get something out of it, we won't. But really applying that hard work into things that are us, that's when the magic starts to happen. You were taught to stay small, live simply, look down on ambition as evil, self sabotage. You were taught to maybe judge other people or even feel secondhand embarrassment for other people who do something bigger than you. It makes you more controllable. I watch a lot of people put a lot of effort into believing in a God, in people that treat them badly, and that someday those people will change, and anything but themselves. We're taught to never, ever believe in ourselves. I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but uh, do the damn thing. If you actively took steps to leave an abusive environment, then keep being active in your healing process. If you were shown the door rather than finding it yourself, well, let that be your wake up call. Nobody accidentally finds themselves with a great life. There are no automatic friends, there are no automatic family. Everything kind of takes effort to some degree. And again, by the opposite of avoidance would be, just do the damn thing, get it done, get started, get into it, get involved, uh, stay curious. A lot of times we have a lot of anxiety around things, right? But curiosity is kind of the opposite of anxiety. Anxiety is assuming we already know what it is and it's probably going to be bad. Curiosity is, let's have an experimenter's mindset. Let's try things. Let's see what works. Let's see what doesn't. If it doesn't work, it's not permanent. We're not going to be shunned forever. No God is going to come strike us down. So just try things. And it's unfortunate that, again, due to fear of confrontation, all these other things we've already probably mentioned, that so many people are just afraid to just do it. Just start and see where something goes, because you can't know until you get in the game. Perfectionism is conditional love for oneself. And based off the back of that, look for the shoulds of internalized gaslighting. Where is it that you're walking through life using the word should all the time to yourself? You know, I should do this. I should be able to do that. What comes after that word should is something entirely made up. Some sort of an expectation of society, of yourself, of your parents, of the cult. Somewhere there was an expectation. And you think, I should be able to blah, blah, blah. Well, maybe you can't. Maybe you can't. And can you be okay with that? Maybe there's other things that you can do. That would be pretty cool. But we walk around with all these made up expectations. We made them. So why can't we change them and have a happier life? If you notice a lot of overthinking on your part, that can often be very much a JW leftover. We were responsible for saving others, for possibly stumbling others. We always had an angle for everything, trying to preach to others or whatever the case may be. Everything is in JW life is run through a JW filter, right? It's kind of hard to turn that off just because you've left. And so a lot of us are just running all these scenarios, and it really can be exhausting. So, you know, again, just beware somewhat the trap of overthinking. Something else that I find with a lot of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses is I think that we have a higher stress floor than other folks. Uh, Growing up in a very stressful, abusive situation, I think that we've become numb to stress to a large degree, until for us, you know, when we start noticing stress, Maybe on our scale, it's a 5. It's probably already at least a 10 for other people. So just know that you may be walking around holding a lot of stress. You may see effects of it, maybe even physical effects. You might be tight all the time, have a lot of muscle problems, may have skin problems. There's a lot of autoimmune diseases, things like that. There's a lot of things that are exacerbated by stress or created by stress. And I think that for a lot of us, we don't realize, because I work with so many people that can't understand why they're stressed. And then they tell me what it is that they're doing or what's going on. And holy crap, no wonder they're stressed. It's so much. Just the fact that most of us live without a family and everything else, there's stress attached to that. All the internalized gaslighting I mentioned a minute ago, the perfectionism, blah, 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 I could go on and on. But many of us are just walking around chronically stressed. We may think that we don't like things to overcompensate for the fact that we weren't allowed to have them growing up. Conversely, we may like things or people just because it's all we ever had with no options. Or we may just kind of be countercultural because Jehovah's Witnesses are extremely contrarian. Jehovah's Witnesses negatively impacted our view of charity. Why give to a world that's passing away? So don't be afraid to look at that in your life, and because that fear of charity can really prevent us from the gift of giving. It feels wonderful to be able to give to other people or to give to a cause that we feel passionately about, whether it's monetarily, time, energy, whatever. So don't let them take that from you too. Many kind of live a life of denial of particularly negative emotions. Negative emotions, I guess, kind of a little bit as a mirror echo of what we talked about earlier um, with crying, and how you take these tears and you go hide your secret shame. Um, Negative emotions weren't dealt with well as Jehovah's Witnesses. They were often seen as from Satan, not your internal warning system. So we were taught to deny these things, that Jehovah would just fix everything later, so don't think about it. But those negative emotions aren't necessarily something to run from. They may be trying to tell you something. Jehovah's Witnesses gave us fear, not fun. So go find the fun. Doing things alone is difficult for a lot of folks, just regardless. But doing things alone hits different as an ex-Jehovah's Witness that has felt complete abandonment versus perhaps your worldly, never Jehovah's Witness person that actually has the option of friends and family, but just chooses alone time. So just realize when it may be a struggle to do things alone, there are reasons that that may be harder for you than for maybe some other people that you see around you, because it's not quite apples to apples. As human beings, we all seek to be understood. We all need to be validated. And when you leave Jehovah's Witnesses, particularly if you're disfellowshipped, you might feel like nobody understands you. You don't understand you. If you still believe in Jehovah, Jehovah doesn't understand you. And it's just this great emptiness of feeling unknown in this world. But where we're truly unknown at that moment is by ourselves. And so just let me encourage you, if you feel that way, to reach out to me, to someone. You're going to have to start working on getting to know yourself. And often that's hard to do alone because of all of the messaging that's in our head that's going to get in the way. And we may need to have somebody to help diffuse that little ticking time bomb a little bit. But everybody deserves a chance to be understood, to be seen, to be heard, to be validated, and you do too. It's just you've never been in an environment where that was really probably going to be a possibility, especially if you were going to be yourself. Is this something that I'm standing on the outside of in life after Jehovah's Witnesses because it's not me? Or could it be because it's me and that makes me feel vulnerable? We often find ourselves talking ourselves out of doing things just like Jehovah's Witnesses did to us every time we wanted to do something. And I'm going to end this section on this. Something that can be very helpful as we move throughout life, I guess, kind of back to that experimenter's mindset a little bit, is control the controllables and divorce yourself to some degree from the outcome of things in life. We can't white knuckle our control issues and make life happen. It doesn't work that way. We can control our input, but we can't always control the outcome. We can control our effort. We can decide what we're going to put into a thing, but we don't always have control. There's so many other things that come in that affect the outcome of situations. So, as you're setting your goals, as you're trying to figure out what you want for your life moving forward outside of it, it's really about having boundaries to some degree. I mean, well, it's boundaries a lot, but even in this instance, not just boundaries with other people, boundaries with money, boundaries with what we eat, boundaries with health, boundaries with a lot of things, but also boundaries with when we try things, what is it that we feel that we can have control of and where we can make an impact? And what are the things that truly we can't always control? Um, and recognizing that can make a really big difference in the way we feel after we try things, after we do things, whether they're a hit or a miss, and how we then rebound from that once that happens. All right, so now let's talk a little Jehovah's Witness theology and the culture of Jehovah's Witnesses and some of the oddities therein. Speaking of odd, Jehovah's Witnesses love to talk about Job's kids and how they were killed, but hey, he was given others later, right? Like those children that he had at first had no individual value. That's kind of how Jehovah's Witnesses see the world, isn't it? They're very detached from the value of human life or individual human life. I mean, they talk about Job's kids like, I don't know, he lost a pack of ink pens and he couldn't find them. Satan hid them from him and couldn't find his pens, but look, Amazon brought another pack of pens and now he can write again and he's perfectly happy. There's just like no value at all put on, there's no sanctity of life when it comes to that. And really, you think about whether it's Armageddon and they're okay with God killing all these people, and that is okay to them as though individual lives don't matter. I don't understand why Jehovah's always killing his creation either. That I don't know. I make something and it's hard for me to get rid of sometimes. I just it's a very odd thing, but it really cuts to how Jehovah's Witnesses see people. Like we're all just these temporary bodies that don't really matter. And even after Armageddon, if their child died, they're kind of like, oh, okay, Jehovah can give me more kids. That's weird. That is so not normal. That shows, I might talk about it later, but we often focus on the detachment, but it's really a lack of attachment to people. It's very strange when you think about it, and it really cuts to how and why Jehovah's Witnesses can act like they do, even to their own kids. Oh, yeah, that's right. I was going to talk about attachment after that a little bit. So anyway, we as Jehovah's or ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, we often focus on the detachment of the Jehovah's Witnesses at the end through shunning. But the reason that detachment happens so easily is because they never really form healthy or secure attachments to their kids to begin with. So they don't know how to attach. They don't know how to love. But you can't have secure attachment in a situation where you as a kid know at any moment that mom or dad could cut you like that. Like we all knew that we could cut people. We all knew that we had to cut others. So most ex-Jehovah's Witnesses are going to be avoidant or anxious attachment or combined, disorganized. But it's how are we going to have secure attachment when we come from a place again, whether it's Job's kids or what? It's just like, kid's gone. We'll just get another Timmy. It's just a very weird place to be. And really, I think when you look at how they look at kids, I think recently there was I think it was explained. One of the governing body members was basically saying that Jehovah loves your kids as parents who perform the most for him. He's going to love your pioneer kids more than your JW hobo kids who aren't really doing anything and barely show up and don't give money and don't really have much as far as spirituality. I guess this is weird. Again, another odd dynamic. And he basically said that out loud, that parents should therefore, like, why are you as a parent loving your JW kid who doesn't perform when you have this other one who's such a great servant of Jehovah? Like, again, should it be any wonder that they can shun us? They're not attached to anybody. When you look at the carrot that Jehovah's Witnesses are chasing, this paradise that they're eventually going to live in, the Garden of Eden yet again, right? Reborn to some degree. It's interesting because heaven couldn't maintain perfection, right? Jehovah couldn't accomplish that in heaven. The earth hasn't been able to do it thus far either. So far, Jehovah has yet to maintain perfection in these various realms that we know of. So why do they think paradise is going to be any different this time? But that promise and everything that goes with it, right? The human desire to live, we all want to live. Most people aren't walking around wanting actively to die, even if maybe they don't attach to this life and struggle with it. Some do, of course. But to show the power of that hope that they have, this false hope with absolutely no evidence, they are willing to shun their kids, right? Shunning goes against the laws of nature in so many ways, at least for human beings. Humans don't normally just kick their kids out and never see them again. That's not really a human thing so much. And so this really goes to show the power of what it is that they believe in, however real or not, real or imagined it may be. Did you ever think about how the cult of Jehovah's Witnesses basically called their shot when they told you that they wanted you to put on the new personality? They used those scriptures to basically indicate the JW frontal lobotomy that they were about to give you, that they were going to try to strip you of who you were, and they wanted to change you and make you into someone else. They called their shot and then they did it. I don't know if you've ever thought about it before, but Jehovah's Witnesses, their beliefs are kind of like a conspiracy theory, aren't they? There's always something behind everything else. They don't trust any systems in the world at all. And let me be clear, I'm not here to tout the systems of this world. They're a mess too. But there is always something behind it that they believe in. Like they don't really trust in modern medicine. They've always got something alternative that they're doing that is the thing that will help. Again, not saying that modern medicine is the be all end all either, but just saying that they don't ever really, they don't often combine the two. They're very anti one and pro the other. And they just don't really, they end up not taking care of themselves to some degree because of that distrust, right? They don't pay into things like retirement that could help them. Many of them don't have the proper insurances. My dad, I think, died without life insurance. They just are so anti-establishments in every way, that it really holds them back and hurts them. And again, it kind of references something I mentioned earlier. When we leave, we have to really start to examine ourselves and the way we interact with the world around us and what our feelings truly are. And are those feelings us? Or are we just kind of echoing the things that we've been told and the kind of anti establishment counterculture narrative of Jehovah's Witnesses that they live? Something that I hear a lot or see a lot in the ExJW community that I think holds us, a lot of us back, something I've wanted to do an episode on even for a long time, is just the notion that so many ex-Jehovah's Witnesses who are even shunned by Jehovah's Witnesses, who have been negatively impacted by Jehovah's Witnesses, run around saying, "Oh, but they're such good people. Jehovah's Witnesses, but there's still so many good people in there." Are there? Is there any other group that you would point at today that is anti-LGBTQ, anti certain types of healthcare that would kill their kids or their pregnant wives, anti education, anti getting involved with other people and just like having fun and doing sports, anti figuring out who you are and loving yourself for who you are, do I need to go on? Is there any other group that we would look at and that anti-family, shutting their kids and the things that they do, destroying families? Is there any other group that we would hold up and that would be a part of their characteristics? And we'd be like, man, those are some good people. Have you ever seen how good they are? They're not good people. And frankly, we probably weren't good people anywhere either when we were Jehovah's Witnesses. And that could be a hard thing to come to terms with, but they can have some good traits. They may have some good characteristics, but are they good people? Do we say that people are good people when they shun somebody to the point of suicide? Oh man, they're just such a good parent. No, of course we wouldn't. Jehovah's Witnesses have some good characteristics, but it's kind of like the difference between being polite and kind. A kind person has depth to it. A polite person is doing the thing they need to do in the social situation to get by. It's like when we were doing the protest at the convention of Jehovah's Witnesses last year, and Jenny was holding the door open for a lot of the witnesses as they were going into this parking garage. And many of them thanked her. They were being polite, but would they be kind to her knowing that she's an apostate? Would they be kind to her knowing that that she's not one of them and that she doesn't believe the same? Are your families kind to you? Jehovah's Witnesses, are Jehovah's Witnesses truly kind to others? Like when there's a natural disaster and they go on their relief work, are they down there to just help the general public because they're so damn kind? Or are they there only to help their own? They're not they're not a monolith of good people. And although there are some people in there with some very good characteristics, because of what they're involved in, they will do monstrous things. They may not all be monsters, but they'll do some monstrous things. But they're not necessarily good people. They're not like the worst people. They're people. They're hurt people. They're misled people. But also, they have a lot of negative characteristics as well that allow them to stay and to do what they do in this scenario and to treat people as badly as they will if you're not one of them. So, as a person, I wanted to say that because I see that a lot. And I think that it hinders a lot of people in the X community because they're just feeling sorry for these folks. They're feeling sorry for their abusers. At a point, it almost starts to sound like Stockholm syndrome, like identifying or over identifying with their captors sometimes even to the point where they lose touch with the fact that they matter and that they don't deserve to be treated this way. So there's a lot that goes into these statements that we make, and words have meaning. So it's a very interesting thing to really think through and to try to figure out how we feel about Jehovah's Witnesses. I personally am not a person that believes in good people, bad people. I just kind of see people all on a spectrum of unhealthy to healthy. Hopefully, they're making their way to more healthy, but I think Jehovah's Witnesses are incredibly unhealthy people. Necessary family business, that Jehovah's Witness provision by which typically they can contact you when they want something. You don't get to decide what's necessary, they do. That is just another way for the cult to exploit you in vulnerable moments. It's not a blessing of some sort. Necessary family business is just something bad has happened typically, and the Jehovah's Witness is going to tell you that someone has died, someone is sick, or they want something from you like money, but it's not going to be in your favor. It's probably going to make you vulnerable, and they're going to try to exploit that vulnerability. Raise your hand in the comments if you have been at a Kingdom Hall when someone had an adverse medical event, or maybe there was a something weather related coming in, a natural disaster or something, and you watched the show just go on like nothing happened. I've been at a Kingdom Hall when an elder, a prominent elder, had a heart attack in the audience, and they just kind of picked up his lifeless body, carried him to the back, called an ambulance, and stuff went on in the back, but the show went on. I've been in Kingdom Halls where there were tornado warnings, or maybe the power went out. And I just remember how proud we were as Jehovah's Witnesses, idiots, sitting in this Kingdom Hall that we had all gone to knowing severe weather was coming. We're all sitting in this Kingdom Hall. The power has gone off. We're huddled around the little can lights, still hosting the meeting off the emergency power. And then so proud of ourselves when the sister goes and plays the piano so that we can sing praises to Jehovah at the end of this thing. Like, not valuing our own lives, not valuing any of the things that you would think a person would value, but valuing the fact that we got to still sing praises with the use of a piano as though that was some major accomplishment in life. Thankfully, we were all okay, but I've sat in Kingdom Halls and literally watched a barn door blow off a barn. I went home later and found my roof ripped off my house. But like, we've done so many things. So maybe put your stories in the comments below where you sat and watched something go down in a Kingdom Hall and everybody just acted like everything was normal and the show went on without missing a beat. What if instead of shunning being a protection for Jehovah's Witnesses, it's actually a protection for ex-Jehovah's Witnesses as a boundary, keeping dysfunctional, toxic people away? Just something to think about. Let's raise our hands again in the comments. If your Jehovah's Witness parents were paranoid and ransacked your room as a kid, going through it looking for potential contraband, or maybe like accusing you of things that you never did in places you never even were, if that was your life, let us know. Jehovah's Witnesses like to say that they don't shun just because the cult tells them to, right? It's not just some men telling us not to talk to this person or whatever. Like, we're not shunning just because we're made to, right? But as soon as a person is reinstated, they rush to that person. They go talk to them, right? So yes, the cult tells them when they can and cannot talk to someone. Now, there was that recent change that allows them to bless a vulnerable person with a basic greeting in a Kingdom Hall, or to invite this person they haven't talked to in years to a meeting. But that has kind of resulted in people in the cult being all happy and pitching JW.org as though it's like Jehovah's Witnesses or JW.org, now with more love, even lovier. It's the dumbest thing. And it just really shows how much control or how much they want to believe this thing, that they can take their mind and do the mental gymnastics to create, whether it's confirmation bias or to avoid the cognitive dissonance of thinking for themselves, in order to continue to stay in that environment, because they have no problem changing for whatever the cult tells them to do. But if you, their child, said, hey, I have a medical emergency, I need help, or hey, there's this situation, or whatever it may be, they can't change for you, right? So it's just amazing how much they can be controlled by just a bunch of dudes in New York. And we were probably there once too, which is something not to forget. Something I think that we in the X community don't realize all the time is that Jehovah's Witnesses aren't having the same experiences necessarily. I mean, whether it's differences in, from one country to another, one part of the world to another, even in the United States, whether you were in like the Bible Belt or the West Coast or the East Coast or the Northeast or whatever, there are different experiences. And sometimes I think it's even congregationally, right? Like if there's neighborhoods and there might be an area of town in where you live that maybe that's not the best area and you wouldn't want to live there, but perhaps if you actually lived there, you would find out that it's kind of block by block to some degree. Some blocks are worse than others. You can go a few blocks over and it's a war zone, and a couple blocks from that it's pretty peaceful and people are just out having parties and having fun. It's kind of like that with Kingdom Halls too, and they each had their own personalities. I've met people who never really knew that shunning was real, maybe until they listened to the podcast or something, because they happened to grow up in a congregation where they never really saw shunning for whatever reason. Or maybe they grew up in a far more liberal congregation where they were able and allowed to maybe more freely engage with certain entertainment. Or I've worked with a lot of people from Hispanic who from Hispanic backgrounds, and in their congregations, they had lots of dancing and such, and there was a love of music. And in my conservative, old, white congregation where I grew up in the Bible Belt in the Midwest, doing the twist was seen as scandalous because it was simulating sex. what somebody said. And it's just like, it's just, there's just a wide variety of experiences, even though we come from such similar environments, and many of us have been exposed to the same spiritual, mental, emotional abuse from the cult through their publications and such. It is important at times to remember that congregationally, sometimes people did grow up in maybe congregations that were more fun or more laid back or more strict, more harsh. So there are still some differences among us as we talk about it. And so just like Jehovah's Witnesses aren't a monolith, or ex-Jehovah's Witnesses aren't a monolith, same applies to Jehovah's Witnesses themselves. There's still room for a lot of differences, even though there are so many similarities. Have you ever seen the the crazy Jehovah's Witness pages on Facebook in your feed? Have you ever had all of these different things pop up? It's just really fascinating sometimes to watch, or go read the comments of one of them, and it's just like, agape, brother, agape, sister, agape, agape. It's the dumbest thing. If you want to lose brain cells, go onto Facebook and find some of these Jehovah's Witness pages and just watch them fall all over each other and just quote random scriptures. And sometimes they get really interesting too, because there was maybe a beautiful sister on there, and you start seeing all these all these creepy brothers come out and say these weird things to them. No riz. It's just, as the young people say, it is just the weirdest microcosm. And the online Jehovah's Witnesses, I mean, go to JW Talk. It's a forum for Jehovah's Witnesses, active Jehovah's Witnesses online. I was a part of that once. It was cringe back then, and I'm sure it's still cringe today. But just go there, and they have some sections that are public, and read, and it's just wow. And I'm gonna leave it at that. But if you know, you know. There's a reason that Jehovah's Witnesses don't have windows in a lot of their kingdom halls. They don't want you looking outside. We have another raise your hand situation here. Raise your hand if you had pity friends at the Kingdom Hall that some adult put you up to befriending. Raise your hand in the comment section if later you found out that you were the pity friend. We were taught to actively disown ourselves. How could you have a quality life while disowning yourself? Living as a slave is not something we ever discuss in a positive context. And then we were taught to be our own enemy by pummeling our body, right? Leading it like that slave, or to see ourselves as a slave. There's just no real way to walk away from that with a quality life without some work and healing. Isn't it odd how Jehovah's Witnesses can be perfectly okay with their God, Jehovah, killing you at Armageddon, let's say if you're disfellowshipped, or shunned for whatever reason. But if you have a medical emergency, suddenly people get messages like, I'm there for you. I love you. Where have you been for 10 years? How can you say you love me? It's just this really interesting dynamic that you see a lot of times when the ex-Jehovah's Witness maybe develops some sort of medical issue or whatever. You see this part of the witness parent come out. It's like, oh man, how's this look? This doesn't look good. Or especially if there's other family involved or whatever. And they just suddenly act like they care. It's like they're trying to convince themselves that they've been there all along. But thou doth protest too much. You don't love me. You haven't been here forever. Where have you been? So it's just really interesting to see how, on one hand, they're okay with their God, who they worship, killing you. Their boy is going to kill you, and they're okay with that. But if you developed kidney disease, cancer, heart problem, whatever, suddenly now they show interest in some way. It's very odd. And of course, a lot of times they don't even then. As ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, we can't just blame the cult for everything when it comes to, let's say, our parents. I know there's a lot of interest in shunning being done away with, things like that. Totally get that. The coercive control of Jehovah's Witnesses and how it relates to shunning, and pushing people or coercing them to do so. But at the same time, you can't just blame the cults, because the humans themselves, the parents, the Jehovah's Witnesses, they all do show their own personality in ways through this, right? You have some Jehovah's Witnesses, who will never shun their kid. They will just act like nothing ever happened and move on. And then you have other Jehovah's Witnesses, like mine, who shunned us well before we ever left the truth, right? They shunned us. They were go-getters. they were all about some shunning, and they were happy to go there. And that's who my family was. Very authoritarian, very rigid, very rule-oriented, crime and punishment. That's what matters. And then you're going to have others who will see their kids in different capacities, or they'll wait until the shunning arrives, or they'll beg their kids not to disassociate so that they can still have a relationship. There's just lots of ways that you can see the personality of the Jehovah's Witness, the individual person, through the way they act and react to these things. So we can't just put it all on the cult, because we have grown adult human beings here who are also showing parts of their personality, much like they probably showed them when they raised us. Some parents are super harsh, some were more lax, some may have been, most of them were at least somewhat physically, mentally and emotionally abusive, just based on the things they were teaching us and stuff. But some took it much, much farther. Some were physically abusive, some were sexually abusive. So again, we can't just blame everything on Jehovah's Witnesses. There are people here that are making decisions. They have brains, they have hearts, and while they are coerced to some degree, we can't just say that they're entirely coerced as though they have no responsibility for what they do. Oh, this is just a little aside that I found interesting, and it's that Jehovah's Witnesses have that hashtag best life ever. And I find that so funny. Well, I find it funny in a lot of ways, but one way that a lot of people maybe have never really thought about is best life ever is not what they're supposed to be having today, right? They're posting pictures of themselves today, like, oh, I've got the best life ever today. Oh, but you're not supposed to. You're supposed to have kind of a bad life, persecuted in Satan's system of things. You're not really, or at least for a lot of them, we were kind of taught that we really shouldn't be happy in Satan's wicked world, and that if we are, are you using it to the full? There's just, it just cuts to the fact that they speak out of both sides of their mouth all the time. But that's just something that kind of tickled me. I thought was kind of funny. There's this whole nature of their best life ever. You're not supposed to be living the best life ever today. And if you see the world as the Titanic, why rearrange deck chairs on the Titanic, then you really shouldn't be happy today. And why aren't you all pioneering at all times and out there saving the world if you really believe the world is coming mañana, right? The world's coming tomorrow. It's right around the corner all the time. Well, why aren't you out there saving people? Because you know it's not too. It's also interesting to look at how insulting we were as Jehovah's Witnesses. I mean, can you imagine sending your 6-year-old today up to a grown adult's house, maybe like their teacher's house or something, and having your 6-year-old kid tell that grown adult, you're wrong. Like, you're wrong in the way you worship. You're wrong in the way you live your life. I, at 6, know better than you do. It's just really wild to look back at the life that we used to live. Jehovah's Witness parents may ask you, their adult child, to stay in the organization to protect your kids, right, with your spirituality. Like, don't leave Jehovah, stay and fool Jehovah so that because he's really dumb and he can't tell that you're just staying in to save your kids through your perfunctory spirituality. It's just really interesting how Jehovah's Witnesses, on one hand, they worship their abuser. They think he's the best ever. They worship this person that they're so afraid of. But on the other hand, they clearly think that he's really dumb and easily fooled. And I'm going to end this section on something that I think has probably touched all of us if we grew up Jehovah's Witnesses, and that is that Jehovah's Witnesses treat children like adults. Never mind the fact that they don't really view children's feelings as valid a lot of times. They don't, again, they're often offended at child tears and can't handle being around them. But just they're expecting you as a kid to care about the end of the world, to deal with a lot of adult topics and adult situations, sitting at Kingdom Halls where very sexual positions are being talked about at times, what's okay or not okay as Jehovah's Witnesses, or pornea, or just all these different things. Just as a kid, you had it rough. And it wasn't just maybe you weren't allowed to play with your little friends that you wanted to, or you had to spend time doing a lot of things that you didn't want to do. So you can't do what you want to do. You have to do what you don't want to do. You're living this life of avoidance of what you really want to do because you have no power. Being afraid of confrontation at every turn because you might ask the wrong question. I mean, I could just go on and on, but also you were treated like you were an adult. You really weren't. A lot of Jehovah's Witness kids, I'm not saying all, but a lot of witness kids really aren't allowed to play like other kids. They're not allowed to grow up having a normal childhood and just being able to have fun for fun's sake and not just worked in around some meetings or whatever, but to actually live a life of being a kid and having fun. And it's just something that I think we all need to realize. And so, as an adult, I'll just encourage you to, I said it earlier, it's a mantra of my own, but it's find the fun. And remember that curiosity is the opposite of anxiety. Be curious about life like a child. Children are supposed to be curious and explore. As adults, we may have to start doing that for the first time to some degree, to be able to be curious and explore, to look at the world around us, see what we enjoy, to try to find happiness for ourselves, because at the end of the day, it's the reason we do everything, right? We're looking for happiness. We go to the restaurant we like because it makes us happy. We hug on our dog because it makes us happy. We find a partner, hopefully, that makes us happy. We have kids because we think that's going to add happiness to our lives because we want to hopefully help them be happy. Being happiness is kind of the ultimate currency. It's what we're really seeking in life with the things that we do. And if things didn't make us happy, we probably would have some resistance to do them when we'll do them. Like filing our taxes doesn't make me happy, but I have to do so in order to live in this world. And I do appreciate that taxes go to some good things. Um, and I'm happy when it's over. But you know, we happiness is kind of the reason that we do things. So just remember that you weren't really given the tools for happiness. Happiness was discouraged. And that's something we're often going to have to work toward and really put effort into as an adult. And that's where we're going to end this part of the episode, but don't hang up just quite yet. If you listened all the way through, I'm sure you're going to find something that you can take away as a reframe of something you already knew or thought about, or that adds to it, or maybe a completely new thought to you. But for those that subscribe to my Patreon at any paid level, I'm going to make sure that there's a bonus episode available to you at patreon.com/shunned. Again, links in the description. But I am going to make a little bonus episode on my views on some things. If you're interested, I tend to have a little bit different view than a lot of folks about things about like Norway and what's gone on there. The ex-Jehovah's Witness community as a whole, we'll talk about that. Violence and Jehovah's Witnesses, we'll get into that a little bit. Maybe some other things if the mood strikes. And for those that subscribe to the back room at the $10 a month tier, since I'm not going to have a guest to interview this time, and we can't ask them other questions that help you to get to know that guest better, for extra access, I'll be the guest. So I don't know, maybe it'll be fun. I guess I'll interview myself. I'll ask myself some of the questions that you may be familiar with if you watch the backroom episodes, if you subscribe to Patreon at that tier. But I'll also do that myself. And you know, some of you might be interested in my answers to some of those fun questions as well. So we'll go through some of that for those that are already members or anyone who wants to join. If you'd like to work together to heal, to engage one-on-one with me in my recovery coaching practice, you can reach out through my site, ExJW Help. It's ExJWhelp.com. Really, pretty much any of my sites, you can find a link for that. Like ShunnedPodcast.com. There's a page there about coaching services as well. I have a form there you can submit, and then I'll reach back. We can work together on lots of the different types of things that were talked about here or otherwise. There's many things to talk about in this process. And there's things that I can't really talk about here because I can't ask you questions to draw out you individually and to help you work on what it is that makes you tick. And what are those, if we opened up the black box of your life after the ship went down, the plane went down, so to speak, as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, what can we extract by looking back at that life that you have that might help you to see who you really are, to see some of your characteristics that you can start to learn to appreciate and maybe start to explore more in this life after Jehovah's Witnesses or any group for that matter. But other than that, we're back to personal stories next time. Again, I'll have descriptions or I'll have links in the description, whether it's on YouTube or in the show notes on the podcast, where you can access different things that I may have mentioned here. But to end this episode today, we're just going to end it with my catchphrase from my This JW Life days: love yourself and others, do no harm, and go be happy.